again, which is kind of nice. Kind of looking at what does the week in Primerica look like. Stuart, do you want to share anything?
I will. You want me to start?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I want you to kick this off.
What up? So it's interesting, right? Part of this adventure over the last couple years, because I'd come up on a Saturday and it would be like, okay, we were working on this, like here's the new words, or here's the new language, or here's what we're working on, and we would be like, one day we're gonna get here, one day we're gonna get here, and we just kind of and for a bit, right, when Robin and I first started kind of connected and being together and stuff like that, I'm like, we're moving on. She's like, you keep moving the damn goalposts, right? Because you're like, when we get here, then amazing things are gonna happen. And I'm like, no, you gotta like. I'm like, when we get here, we're gonna have a new adventure that we're then going to get to here, and we keep building to like this process, this opportunity for profitability and growth and stuff. And so it's fun to be on this path. And I say that because I'm going to go through and kind of talk for a couple minutes about what's happening. And what I don't want is I don't want anybody in the room to, for those of us that have been here through this process, the stuff that's starting to happen is just the next step. The problem is it might not feel like the next step if you're walking in, right, Mona? If you're walking in and going, here's where we are right now, and here's what I'm talking about, that gap might seem pretty significant. But the reality is that it's just the next step. Part of why we talk about attacking your IC is it allows you to say, okay, I get to put this behind me and build to the next. I get to put this behind me and build to the next, right? But the only person that can be responsible for you growing is who? Is you. And so that's our responsibility, right? So just, I wanted to throw that out there as we kind of go through this, because I had kind of another good week, kind of excited about some things. One, we signed, so the documents for Voya have been signed for the crossover MAP, so that it's now done, all but done, right? So like the hard part of like negotiating and figuring out is done. Now it's just kind of running that process. So that's kind of a fun and exciting thing, right? Where that changes all of our lives, right? Like this is the, and it's funny is I'm not sure you know what you know, but it's like just, it's, yes. But the cool thing was yesterday, so John Watts has become my bestie. So John Watts is
that the guy that's on all of
the compliance stuff? Yeah,
that's the lawyer.
Yeah, he's the lawyer. So he's the Primerica lawyer, the retirement Primerica lawyer. Imagine I become best friends with the Primerica, right? Now the interesting thing, a couple years ago, we said, look, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna come up with the strategy. We're gonna come up with this plan, and then we're gonna end up in the rooms, and we're gonna present this, and we're gonna build this in such a way that we're going to end up in the rooms that matter. We're going to end up, and we have an opportunity to craft the direction of our company. Now, we said that with about the same number of people in the room, but we were significantly less developed, right? We had less licenses, right? We had about the same, right? But we didn't have language. We didn't know everything that was going on. We didn't know the direction. We didn't have a business-to-business platform. We didn't understand the primary. We didn't have we knew access support was going to be on point. We knew we were going to have some technology, and we knew that we were going to build allies, advocates, and associates, and we were going to enlist people in rather than reject them. Like those were the premises we knew. And we go, one day, build on these core principles, we're going to end up in conversations. So yesterday, the conversation was, okay, so what are you guys doing?
Who asked you that?
John Watts. So John Watts is, for those of you, he's like the head Primerica lawyer. But John Watts in 2012, basically because of what's called a 408 filing that the Department of Labor came out with, that Primerica had to kind of like figure out what they were doing. No one in the home office knew what they were doing because this is an insurance company. So John Watts, been here for a long time. He's a lawyer. Goes, this sounds interesting, and then said, here, do it. And so he started, I did not know this, but he's championed the 401k in Primerica. And so he's like, but he has no idea what he's doing, right? Because he's like, how do you learn this stuff, right? You learn it by fire, right? And so we're good at this. So I didn't know that 6-8 months, a year ago when we started this process. We now know it, right? But we've developed this relationship. So the really fun thing about it is, yesterday was the first time that I laid out the business-to-business strategy. The first time that I laid out, here's what we're doing. John, you still think that we did this on accident. You still think we did this because we were lucky, and you don't understand. And that's okay that you understand, don't understand. I haven't explained it. And I walk through and I talk about essentially establishing an Uber Primerica, the opportunity to have someone come in, turn on an app, say, I'm willing to work on Tuesday, and us going, okay, well, here's 3 people, call them and develop them through this process. And we'll tell more of the story and stuff like that. But it was the first time that John Watts was like, oh, okay, you got to do me a favor. What's that? He said, I'm going to send you an introduction email. I need you to talk to Bill Kelly. I'm like, okay. Bill Kelly is the president of PFS Investments. So I have a meeting with Bill Kelly on Monday. To roll out and to start it's a preliminary meeting, the same preliminary meeting I had with John Watts, same preliminary meeting we had with all these people, right? It'll take them 6 months to figure out we're not full of shit, and then we know what's going on, and that's fine because we keep walking through this. But the 2 things that I talked about was, John, you got to help me get this corporate 529 plan. And he's like, oh, that's done. Don't worry about it. We'll figure that out. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, it's just a coding error issue, but with what you told me, yeah, we'll figure that out. I'm like, okay, great. Cool. So, but here's the reason why I wanted you to understand where we are. 2 things. 1, 6 years ago, I was a almost $500,000 earner in Primerica, had built a big base 7 years ago, a big base shop for a really long time, traveled, boat, all sorts of things, tremendous amount of credibility inside the house. And I could have never had these conversations. It wasn't where my training was. It wasn't where our mindset was. It wasn't where our skill set was. I've had to work really hard on myself, on my belief, on my changes, on my language, on my understanding to be able to exist in a room like that and to be able to put myself in a place where, of course, they're going to talk to me. Now, here's the interesting thing. Paul only knows this language. Listen, you only know this language. 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, it's not going to be a shock that you're in these rooms. It's not going to be a shock that we have these conversations. It's not going to be out of alignment. This is the new normal. Now, it might seem far for someone who comes in and is like, oh my God, how can I ever talk to this? But the reality is, when you learn the getting started, when you learn the business platform, when you can articulate what we're doing, it doesn't change. Let me make sure that this is perfectly clear. The conversation I had yesterday with John Watts was no different than the conversation that Robin and I had dinner 2 weeks ago with the lawyer friend. It was the same conversation. There is no secret conversation. There is no difference. Now, the level of enthusiasm, the level of vision, the level of fall through, the level of opportunity. That's my burden, that's my responsibility, that's my skill set to be able to say, here's where we are, here's where we're going. But it's the same skill. And so when we talk about pick this thing up, recognize where we are and be different 6 months from now, be different a year from now. You and I never know the opportunities we're going to have, right? The conversation that I had with John Watts today was, and I'm talking to John, and he's like, man, Brett, every time you and I talk, it's an adventure. Like, damn right, that's the reputation I want. And we have a compensation issue and stuff like that. And so I'm like, and he's like, look, when you talk to Bill, I want you to bring this point up. And I'm like, okay. I go, let me ask you a question. Am I having this conversation because I want Primerica to fix it? Or am I having this conversation because I want him to understand that I understand the long-term vision? And he's like, and this is why this is critical. This is why our thinking is so important. Is he's like, you know, Brett, everyone calls me and complains about the problem, you're the first person I can remember that said, I'll make the investment if we understand that the relationship is more important because we'll make that back. He goes, that is the type of people that can make a change. That's our philosophy. That's our foundation. That's our language. That's the change. That's the growth. That's not being the same person and just wrapping it in a better situation. That's when stress comes in, right? I am not who I was 5 years ago. Categorically, responsibly, functionally. You can't make a word game to get me to act like I did 5 years ago. I don't care what you said. It's not going to happen. That's my change. And I say that because we're going to talk today about opportunity. You're going to talk a lot about where your change is, where the opportunities and where the growth is. And the person sitting in your chair gets to determine who you are 6 and 12 months from now. The opportunities will be presented. I want all of us to be able to max them out for whatever we need. Oh. We're the only ones on the Primerica beta list with paychecks, 401k, and principal 401k. We have contracts with them. And if we trip on any of them, we can. Yeah, because we're the only ones in the company that have access to it right this second. Here's what that means. It doesn't mean much to anything except 80% of paychecks, 401ks don't have a broker. They're predominantly small businesses. We lose them to other clients. We lose them to other clients because they're cheaper, because they're done in-house. It allows us to compete with Captain 401k or human interest because their pricing for a smaller one is built into the payroll. So it gives us that competitive advantage. I did some research on that. It openly changes the game. Now, Primerica has no idea what to do. They have no idea how to process. My conversation with Tom was, I'm scared that you guys are doing all this stuff because the level of support isn't there. No one at the home office is an expert in this shit. It's complicated. He's like, I know. So we're providing opportunities. We don't know what we're going to do. And I'm like, well, here's the deal. You keep providing the opportunities, and in the next 12 to 18 months, we will build the infrastructure and the game plan that you can take at scale. All right. So he's like, great. Tell me what I need to do. Guys.
Please tell me what you can tell him.
Of course.
Yes, back door.
This is what we said was going to happen. Oh, by the way, this is a $4 billion company that went IPO the same time as Tesla and has performed at the same level. That is the company that we are starting to move. And you're here. Do you recognize it? Are you realizing the opportunity you have? Or are you waiting for it to get better? It will. I promise. Because so far, everything I said was going to happen has happened. And I don't plan on it changing. So, that's my message.
So what did your sting? Oh, there's lots of interesting things about that. But that's a talk that Brett might have thought he was going to do at the end of our conversation today, right? To leave you with what's possible. And I wanted you to be primed for what's possible to engage in the rest of the conversation, which is why I invited him up first. I wanted you to hear where we are. Because when we talk about what you can do here, when we talk about who you might want to be and grow into in order to do these things, I think that some of you don't actually believe us about where we are. I think some of you actually don't believe Brett when he says how much he's grown. Because you're like, oh, please, that's Brett. Like, really, Brett, you've grown the way you're trying to make me grow, want me to grow. And I can tell you, Brett's grown. I can tell you Like, this is the stuff you don't see. I'm gonna share a little of the back office. 3 years ago, Brett would start writing emails to folks at the home office, emails to different clients. And he would send me every email to review before he sent it out. Did you know that? You probably thought Brett was like email writing genius, huh? He sent me every email. Because I know that world. And I would, honest, I would rewrite the entire thing. True?
Yeah.
True. I was like, oh, that's a good start. Here's what I would say. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. Send. Okay?
Yes.
True story. This week, Brett, there were 2 different times, well, there were several different times, but in particular, Brett was emailing with the head of Crossover's HR department. And he was like, I got to email John. And I was like, okay, I'll put together the email. And he's like, okay, so here's what I've got. And I was like, oh, I have no comments. He's like, seriously? Years of me working on these emails and him striving to get better at it. Right? We all have a place for growth. Your coach, right, recognized what he wants to achieve and who he needs to be to achieve it, and has engaged in his own growth and has enlisted people in his life who can help him get there. Not surprisingly, I had the opposite situation. I know this business world that we're walking into really, really well. And the world that I don't know or haven't known and still learning is the Primerica world. And what does that mean? That means, how do I talk to y'all? What's the right way? At what level? Right? In the business world that I operate in, folks know how to write those emails. And you can't know if you don't know, right? If you're trained, if in your job, right, you're taught to wait for someone to tell you what to do, why would you do it any differently? And it's taken me years to understand that. And to be able to recognize, seeing where someone is, and coming in 1 degree more intense. And sometimes I back all the way up. And then Brett's like, wait, where are you going? So the growth that we are encouraging in all of you, and that we're going to get into more today, is growth that we ourselves are holding ourselves accountable to. And we'll talk more about that. And I wanted to prime this conversation with, it's real. Right? It's happening. This isn't like it's going to happen. It's happening. And so I want to invite Wade up to share with us some of what's happening in our Primerica team here.
How's everybody doing? Good, that's exciting stuff. And so what I'm going to talk about is how do we put ourselves in there's one piece of paper, all right, let's back this piece of paper. How do we put ourselves I'm caffeinated greatly. Let me reset. All right, here we go, reset. All right, how's everybody doing? Exciting stuff, right? What I want to talk about is how do we take advantage of these opportunities with our businesses, okay? And so what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to talk about 3 things. I'm going to talk about sort of my schedule and the concept of 8-5-3-1, right? We're going to talk about basically the 3 things that we do for that. Is that better? Okay. Right, 8-5-3-2-1. We're going to talk about 8-5-3-2-1, my schedule. We're going to talk about the 3 ways to do that, which is the baseline 30, the 4 quadrants, and the wellness. And we're going to talk about the access gap and credibility. Okay? So, who remembers what 8-5-3-1 is? Anybody? Okay, great. So 8531 is a rule of Primerica, right? Everything is changed and nothing is different, right? Or nothing is different, everything is changed. 8531 says that if you set 8 appointments, 8 qualified appointments, you will sit with 5 of them, and you will do business on 3, and you will recruit 1 person. All right? So this is a method of business forecasting, right? And so when I started in Primerica, I was like, this number's impossible. How do you set 8 appointments by going to Target and talking to 12 people a day? That's impossible. It's hard to do. I'll never do it. I can't do it. Right? So what I want to talk to you guys about is my week. All right? So on Saturday, I talked last Saturday, and I was very excited. I was like, all these things are going on. And I just want to walk you through my week from Saturday to today, and then basically what's planned already for next week to next Thursday. All right? So, and then I'm going to talk to you about how that happened, the magical process of how that happened. Secret process, okay? So on Saturday after training, I sat down with Ken and I started to do his FNA, right? We started to enter it together because I'm starting to train him in terms of how to do the FNA on the computer. We're starting with his computer, right? And we also went through his top 10, right? And in that process, what I discovered is that his mother has $150,000 that's in a bank account somewhere, in a savings or a money market account that she got from a cash value life insurance policy that devastated his family. Okay, so going through that process, we now have an impact story, and I know. Oh, wait a second. His mom may have some prior judgments about insurance or the insurance industry because not only was she devastated, he was promised all these things from his policy that he never got. Okay, so now I know. Oh my goodness, we're going to go sit down with her and we're going to make her an ally, right? So we're sitting down with her sometime next week, all right? Go back to Monday. I had a lunch go back where I wrote an insurance sale for $67. We started the process to open up a money market account for a emergency fund, right? And then we started talking about phase 2. That was with the Crafts from the wellness. That evening, I did a Zoom appointment with Sean, with a couple from the wellness. We got a commitment, and we're going back to them next week. On Tuesday, I did a quadrant getting started with Alan and discovered he has $100,000 in a 401k from his divorce settlement that we need to find and we need to roll over. That's going to be waiting for him so that when he gets his securities license, as it rolls to him. Does anyone think it's more or less likely that if he has $100,000 waiting for him, he's going to get his licenses? Yes. Does anyone think that once he gets his licenses and he has $100,000 or $250,000 that we're going to get for him in quadrant 2, that he's ever going to leave the business? No. Okay. And then Tuesday night, I went to Google Grind, which is a startup thing, which basically some of us have gone to. And there's a guy there, Vitaly, who I know, and there's a guy there, Ricardo, who I know, who they both agreed to sit down with me next week for different reasons. They're just being developed in my baseline build. Wednesday, I had lunch with Jason Miller, who's an attorney.
Wait.
Yes.
Only if you want us to see it.
Sorry. I just doing my coach this. So Wednesday, I had lunch with Jason Miller. He owns a law firm. Him and I have been trying to have lunch literally for 1 year. Okay? So he's been in my baseline 30. I can show you the emails. He cancels, I cancel, whatever. It's taken a year to do this lunch, right? And the email I actually sent to him was, we are going to solve cancer when we have lunch because that's the universe is stopping us from getting together. It's going to be amazing, right? So we got together. We started having a conversation. I told him impact stories. He started asking me about, well, these things with managed account and wellness. And I did the 6-packet sugar packet story that we learned in downside protection is more important than upside participation. I said, do you have 2 minutes before we go? He's like, yes. I showed him that. Great. Thursday, or no, that Wednesday. That wasn't Wednesday. That was Thursday. I didn't do anything. Actually, I did all this on Thursday and Wednesday. I didn't do anything because I was too busy. And then Friday, I didn't do anything because I was too busy. I'll leave it. Okay. So, almost done with the schedule. Today at 3 o'clock, I have a go back with one of the Theater Unleashed people with Melissa, that we did last week. Melissa's gonna do that with me on Zoom. We're gonna do a go back. We're gonna start with an emergency fund for him. Monday, I'm sitting down with Ken, who's on my team, and Janet. Ken's like, hey, I was talking to somebody at work. She may want to do it. Janet, can we sit down with her Monday? Yes. At 3 o'clock, I'm doing a go back with someone that I'm taking Ken on with so he can observe. And so who thinks that when we're sitting down talking with Janet, and Janet's like, is this thing legit, that the topic that Ken's gonna go on an appointment with me at 3 o'clock is gonna come up? Yeah. Right? So Janet's gonna see that not only is Ken in the business, he's going on an appointment with me that he knows nothing about, right? Then on Tuesday, I've gotta go back with Sean from the Theater Unleashed with a commitment of 200. Then at 9, I'm sitting down with Chris just by myself. Chris is a referral from Sean that Sean, for various reasons, can't do anything with, so that I'm going to do for him, right? That I didn't even know anything. Sean didn't know anything. The guy called me and said, hey, Sean referred me to you. Can you sit down with me? Yes, we'll do a Zoom appointment at 9 o'clock. And then on Thursday of next week, so far, I'm sitting down with Robert Madrid, who's a lawyer I've been trying to sit down with forever. And one other person, I can't remember who it is that I can't remember right. So there's an unknown appointment that I don't even know who it is, but I'm for sure doing it. Okay, so now here's the thing about all these appointments, guys, right? Do you guys notice that, by the way, so last week I wasn't talking about this many appointments, right? I was like, oh, some stuff's going on, some stuff's going on. We always talk about in business, this is not a linear business, right? The business does not go like this. The business goes like this. Ooh, boop, ooh, boop. What does this look like? Ooh, boop, right? And it has an exponential explosion, okay? And here's the deal. Let me tell you now how this was accomplished, okay? I have no idea what's gonna happen in this next week, right? I don't know how much business we're gonna do, I don't know anything, but here's what I know, right? That if I get my skill up, right, and if I have more enthusiasm, who thinks I have more enthusiasm in these appointments next week than I did last week? Right? Who thinks I'm more confident going in these appointments next week? Who thinks that when I'm like, I have an appointment here and I don't really know who it is or what it is, but I'll figure it out? Like, that's a cool thing. Like, I wrote this down, I can't read my writing, I can't remember who this is, right? So, I probably should be able to remember, but it's written down somewhere, so that's okay. So, here's how I accomplished this, guys. It's incredibly simple. The baseline 30, 4 quadrants getting started, and a wellness. That's it. That's all I'm doing. I don't know, for some of you that were here a year ago or whatever, we were talking about, and Brett brought me up here, and we're like, okay, Wade's doing this baseline 30, right? None of this was happening. But I was talking to people, I was developing it, and I really wasn't doing it on purpose, I was just kind of doing it, right? The baseline 30 and the getting started, all of these things, Bryce is for my baseline 30, everything is just from these 3 things. This isn't magic, this isn't from, now this is for my market, like I have people in my market, right? And if you're saying to yourself, well, I don't have a market like you probably don't, right? But you can recruit me, because if you show me this, right, and you have your own market that you're working, right? Because this guy here on Tuesday, Chris, that I'm sitting with, is not in my market, he's in Sean's market. Right, and I recruited Sean, and Sean is sent him to me, and now I'm going to sit with that guy, right? But then in my own market, I've been developing my own baseline 30 for the last year and a half, right? Now for you guys, it's not going to take a year and a half to do your baseline 30 because we're better at it. We know what we're doing, and you can have impact stories. If you don't have any, you can use mine. You can use Brett's. You can talk about we had this amazing crisis, right? So in these appointments, and I don't even know what the number is, right? I think it's more than 8, whatever. In these appointments, they all result only from running the system. And here's the thing. You may be saying to yourself, well, I'm not good at it, and I don't know it exactly. I'm like, that's great. It doesn't matter. If you're operating for right now, it matters going forward. But today, if you go out today and you just start doing your baseline 30, you'll eventually, you talk to enough people, somebody's going to come on your team. I don't care how long. There's a number of days, there's a number of people you have to talk to that someone's going to have to say, yes, I would like to be on your team, right? And I can tell you from personal experience, when that's a real person that says, yes, I would like to be on your team, you're going to get more confident. And then you're going to go back to your baseline 30 and you're going to talk to more people, and someone else is like, yes, I'd like to get some more information. Then you're going to start doing the 4 quadrants of getting people started, and you're going to find $100,000, right? And then you're going to be like, whoa, I can do this. Then you're going to start talking to people about the wellness, and you're going to get a wellness, right? This is not magic. It is the steps are linear, but the business is exponential. It is a paint by numbers business. We just do this, this happens, we go back, we debrief, we get better, we go back, we debrief, we get better, we go back, we debrief, we get better, right? And then you will start to have these things happen. This is not magic. It is work your baseline 30, tell them impact stories. Next time you see them, tell them another impact story. Next time you see them, what are you gonna do? Tell them another impact story. Just make sure that you remember which one you told them the last time. I changed my impact story all the weeks, right? So, because everyone on this list is the piston theory, just like Brett talks about. Jason Miller took me a year to get to talk to him. He has a ton of money in his investments, and I was like, has your broker ever done a financial independence number for you? He's like, no. I was like, has she ever talked to you about managed accounts? He's like, what's a managed account? I was like, do you have over $25,000 in your accounts? Like, I got way over there. I was like, all right, well, here, let me take out these 6 packets of sugar. I don't know what's going to happen for this, right? But it took me a year to talk to him to show you, oh, this explosion in 1 week all came from once. No. Okay? No. If you're operating in these buckets, this will happen. Don't be scared of this, because the conversations it's all the same. In my legal business, right? So give you another example that business is business, this isn't magic. I have the same conversation with every prospective client every single time. They all ask me the same questions every single time, and I have stock answers that I have to be professional at to sound like I'm excited when I say it. Right? Oh, no, you have to think of everything. You have 2 cases. One case is the DMV case, one case is the court case. Let's talk about the DMV case first. Blah, 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 blah. Do I sound like anyone talking about this stuff, right? It's the same thing. And so what's exciting about it is once you start, I'm nowhere near where I need to be for my skill level. I'm starting to crank on it. Once you get really good at it, then you can get creative about how you work in these buckets. All right? So the last thing I want to talk about is, guys, we talk about the access gap, and Brett always laughs at me. He's like, oh, yes. The access gap is real, right? This isn't something where what we learn in here, we take for granted. We take it for granted what we learn. We take for granted the fact that, like, the skills that we learn, we take for granted, like, oh, yes, there are accounts out there where you can get 11.5%. Oh, yes, there is managed accounts. We take that for granted. And the reason why we take it for granted is because we're sitting down with these wellness people from the nonprofit, and they're all desperate for information. But here's the problem. They don't have anyone to talk to. And so if you talk to someone and they tell you, yeah, I'm good, they're lying. They just don't believe you, or you don't have enough credibility with them. I realize that the whole purpose of this business, one of the purposes of this business, is that we present ourselves to someone with that they believe we have enough credibility so that they feel comfortable sharing that they don't have anyone to effing talk to, right? Everyone you know, just assume, maybe there's one of them that knows what it is, but that means 99 out of 100 don't, okay? So just assume that every human being that you sit with needs to talk to you, and you need to figure out a way to make them feel comfortable talking to you. That's our business. And the credibility piece from doing the baseline, all the baseline 30 is, and all the getting started is, and all the wellness is getting them to put yourself in a position to where they feel comfortable telling you, I don't know anything. And you say, that's great. I used to not know anything either. Let me share these sugar packets with you. It's that simple. And so don't be afraid of everyone else because they don't know what you know. We need to go through this process, and as you go through this process, you will build your credibility with them, and someone will say to you, hey, I have $100,000, what do I do with this? And you're like, oh, it's easy. Let me show you the sugar packets. And the only way that you do it, and I'm telling you, is going through these 3 buckets. So 8531 used to be like this magical thing. I was like, that's impossible. But I said originally, I was like, I'm gonna validate this number, right? I'm gonna validate this number, and that will make me feel good about my business. This number, this is not the business. We're gonna have way too many appointments. If you do the number of appointments just off of the 2 getting starteds, okay, off of the 2 getting starteds, off of the one wellness, and off of 2 or 3 people turning to their own market is 23 appointments. that I have to service. I have one person who's trained enough to do that. That's me, right? That's 23 appointments off of 2 getting started, 1 wellness, and 2 of my people turning to their market for 1 appointment each of 23 appointments that have to be serviced. There is another 60 people, there's another 70 people in the nonprofit that once they start hearing about what's happening, because everyone's like, this is amazing, we're gonna get more appointments from that. And then we're gonna get more people. I don't have enough people. If you do this, this is not magic. If you do this, and if you commit yourself to getting better at it, you will grow. If you just go start doing it, and you're like, you're in that bucket, you will force yourself to get better to stay in the bucket. Because if you start talking to your baseline 30, you're gonna get really tired of not knowing what to say. You're like, I better go start learning what to say. As long as you know you're in your baseline 30. And then you'll get better. Just go, just start, and you'll get better. Thank you.
What's that?
I don't know if I know the sugar pack impact story.
It's a,
Explain it.
okay, well, that's a, do you want me to explain the sugar packet story or no? It's probably not.
Not right now, we'll do it.
We'll do it.
I'll show it.
Yeah, I don't know it either.
It's all it
Yeah, you
is.
can do
It's all it is it's a way of explaining managed accounts. So it's an actual
called the
tool, or it's a
Yeah, it's the same quarters. It's what he did on the table.
You can do 6 pens. It doesn't matter. It's just a way of explaining the. It's a tool that we use to do managed accounts, and I will teach it to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Good job, Wade.
That was fantastic. That was fantastic. And that was fantastic on multiple levels. Again, there are people sitting here today who maybe weren't here with us a year ago or 2 years ago and haven't watched the growth of Wade over the years, right? Who can remember Wade giving talks a few years ago, right? And Wade gave great talks, but like, might not have been as organized, and when he was a little uncomfortable, he might have made a joke, or he might have asked a question in a different way. Like, the growth of Wade's communication and his not just sharing what he's doing, right, but also how it applies to all of you so that he's growing a distribution company is awesome and mind-blowing. And it's really important for us to remember because it's somewhere all of you can get to on purpose, right? On paper, on purpose. This isn't Wade accidentally tripping over all of this stuff. We've been talking for the last 2 years about Wade building that market, right? And Brett has been saying, if you build it, you can turn to it. If you build it, you can turn to it. If you build it, you can turn to it. Let that be an example to inspire you to action. Where are you going to be 6 months from now? Where are you going to be a year from now? Not that you're going to be Wade, but what are you going to do to move your ball where you are to where you want to get to? And in order to move the ball, right, one of the key things, there was a bunch of great nuggets in what Wade said, but one of the ones he said is, you do it, you go back, you debrief, you get better. You do it, you go back, you debrief, you get better. For us to get better, we have to, one, analyze where we are. We get to realize where we are from strength. Everything that we've learned to today, right? We chose on purpose to spend the last month focusing on the getting started. All of you at least know what this piece of paper is. Many of you can actually write it out. And a number of you can have the conversation. That's locked in. We get to recognize where we are. We get to celebrate for a moment where we are. Right, Jim Rohn, like, take a minute, but only a minute. Because then we got to use that energy to take action. And the only way we know what action to take is that we're clear about where we're headed and what are the skills to get there. So with that, I want to invite David to come up because he's taken some time to think about where he is and he wants to share some realizations with you.
Morning.
Morning.
So, just want to start off with I mean, Brett, pumped me up after he came up and said all the things he said, and Wade just pumped me up because I get to see where I want to be, right? So I get to see my new IC, which is great. So I wanted to share what my month of February has been like in the past week. So Robin and Brett obviously leveraged people in the office. And I worked with Robin a lot about my scheduling, right? Like how to time manage, how to schedule, and how to attack my schedule by week, by month, and just simply attacking it. And from February, it's just been a crazy month for me. So so just by her teaching me certain things, like I used to, have an alarm for daughter time, office time, and what am I actually gonna do per hour, per 30 minutes? Like, what am I gonna get accomplished? And then after I've learned it and I thought I mastered the skill, I'm like, you know what, I can do this. I went back to doing it by myself, right? I was like, I stopped telling Robin this was going on. I'm just gonna go attack it. I know what to do. I just gotta accomplish what I gotta do. So say my Wednesday, something happened Wednesday at a certain time, I wouldn't go and debrief or talk to her or update Robin. I would just go do it by myself. So I went back to that old way of thinking of principles of like, I can do it myself. I mean, she taught me, and then I validate, right? I validate my way of thinking and say, well, she taught me, I know how to do it. I'm just going to continue on doing it. And then I get stuck. And then I just keep going and I push forward and I'm pushing forward in the wrong way. So I stopped leveraging her. And it's when I realized, I stopped and I was like, okay, why am I not growing? Why have I stopped growing? And it's because I stopped leveraging Robin. I stopped leveraging people in the office. And I just stopped leveraging the experts that we have in the office. So after I realized that, I'm like, okay, I need to achieve what do I need to do to achieve what I want, right? And it's like what Wade was talking about. Go back, debrief, update them into what's going on and what's happening so they can reassess me and then show how I can get something accomplished, right? So if I can Skype them, I can call them. I don't have to be there physically. I can just text them. I can pretty much be that type of proactive person in my own learning, my own engagement, because it's for me. They don't want it for me. I think they wanted more for me, but I gotta want it more. So it's that type of thinking, and I just wanted to share that, and not only to the sense of what am I going to do different about it, because I'm a person that I'll get excited on growth, and I'll get excited on just, oh man, I learned that I was doing something wrong, so I'm happy that I learned that I'm doing something wrong and I can fix it, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but there is something wrong with it if I stay there and I don't do nothing about it. So what am I going to do different is I feel like I need to work on my strategies. But like this morning, I came in this morning and I went straight to Robin's office and I'm like, Robin, this is what's happening. This is what's going down. Help me. How do I get out of this? How do I grow from this? And it's to work on my strategy, because I go tactical and I try to just attack whenever, and I always I forget about things that I don't want. I mean, I forget about doing the minimal things that needs to get me to strategy, because strategy is the key for me. So I can just be tactical and take care of things. But I just wanted to share where my week is and where my mind is and how I need to leverage our experts here and not go into that thinking of, doing it on my own. Because I can't really do it without leveraging our team.
Thank you. So it was really interesting because David came to my office and he was like, I need 5 minutes. I was like, oh, really? Well, okay. I guess I'll give you 5 minutes. And he shared this with me. And I went tactical to solve it. So he shared with me his realization. Now I instantly got, and I've been saying this to a couple of people in this room, okay, I'm thrilled with the realization. Let's celebrate the realization. And now when we celebrate the realization, what are we gonna do with it? Right? I'm talking about what's the energy? What's the energy? What's the energy? And I went right to, what are we gonna do? We haven't done this in a little while. When you see this triangle, what do you think of?
See, it's a pyramid.
And when you see the pyramid, it is a pyramid. Thank you. When you see this pyramid, what do you think of? So I said triangle. Okay, when it's a draw, well, actually for the pyramid, it's annuities too. Okay, when I draw the lines through the middle, axis gap, that's interesting.
I see Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but that's a programming thing.
I like that too. So remember this thing? This was called like directional planning and strategic planning and tactical planning. Remember that? Remember that? Okay. So I'm confused. We had the little like the one big box here and the 3 boxes here, and then the lots of boxes here.
Is this like on a Wednesday night training or something?
So
It's over 6 months ago.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
right. And this really the overlay is this. Okay, right. Ultimately, it's about the IMIC. And in the IMIC, we have the big goal, which is our beacon of light. That's my little beacon of light, big. And this is what we say is our directional goal, right? This is what guides us in the direction that we're headed, okay? And to get to that, the key that we talked about and talk about in this room is what would we need to do to make accomplishing that goal an inevitable result, right? Because we know that actions equal consequences. And so if you know you want to achieve something, wouldn't it be helpful to do the actions that you know will result in achieving that thing? Or else are certainly highly likely to achieve that thing. Because then you can actually sleep at night, right? Because otherwise we're awake and going, oh my God, how am I going to do? How am I going to do? How am I going to do? But if I'm clear about here's what I need to do, and if I do these things, I'm going to reach it, I get to sleep at night. And so we said, okay, well, how do you figure that out, right? And so we said, well, what are the strategies that I need to achieve to make my directional goal an inevitable result? What are the skills that I need to learn? Right? What are the strategies for me in order to make my directional goal an inevitable result? And once I have these strategies, and look, you might have 20 pyramids, right, in your business, but we narrow it down and we focus on where is, and this is where these things start to cross, right? So if you're here and you're getting to here, then this becomes the mini directional goal. And then what are the strategies that if I achieve them, getting from here to where I can see is an inevitable result. And once we identify the strategies, we then say, okay, so one of the things that Dave and I talked about today is, so here's the directional. And David kept hearing, what do I do? But we decided this is do and this is the do. Right? Because we hear what do I do, and we often go right to tactical. And that's where David and I went. And then when I walked in and talked to Brett, he was like, okay, so good job in you and David strategizing what he's going to do, but that doesn't actually solve the problem he came to us with. And the problem, for solve it in a inevitable way. And the problem was, David said, I unplug. And he's like, and I'm ready to plug back in. And I was like, cool, here are the things we're going to do this week to plug back in. Which is cool, but it doesn't actually solve for the problem that David came in with. Because it's very easy for David to take his excitement on his realization, do this for 3 days, and then something crazy happens in his life, and what happens to David? He unplugs again. And I was like, oh, right, okay. So what are the strategies? So for David, the directional goal is, I want to stay plugged in. And then we started to go to, okay, well, what are the strategies that I, David, if I achieve these strategies, staying plugged in is an inevitable goal, an inevitable result, and then I don't have to worry and focus on getting unplugged. And if we can identify those strategies, not 20 things, right? Those 3 key strategies, then we say, okay, what are the things that I'm gonna do in order to make achieving those strategies an inevitable result? Once I've achieved this planning, the only thing I actually have to focus on is the tactical. We just have a tendency to focus on the tactical, and if we're not clear about where the tactical is going to get us, then the sheer energy of focusing on the tactical goes away and we fall off. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if we have clarity as to where the tactical will take us, if we take the time to plan first, then we can only focus on the tactical. We can rely on our energy on the tactical, because if we achieve the tactical, it will lead to the inevitable result. Yes.
I think the other thing too is that if you identify your strategic do set, then you don't ever unplug. You're just on or you're off. Meaning, so like, because when David comes back, he's like, okay, well, I haven't, or anyone for that matter, I haven't been doing something. What do I need now to do to get back in the flow of my Primerica, of my business, right? But if you establish the strategic part, then if you get, like I get taken away from my legal business all the time, and I don't feel stressed, I'm not doing something because I know the plan's there. When I have time, I'll go right back to the plan. So you never feel out because you have a plan that keeps you in all the time.
Well, and what that is that's a strategy for being plugged in all the time.
Oh.
Right? So your focus on the plan and your relationship to the plan is one of your strategies for actually being plugged in all the time. What becomes interesting is, what does plugged in mean? Right? Is plugged in, I'm at every single meeting, I'm calling Brian Robin all the time, I'm on 25 appointments, right? What is plugged in?
Right.
And so for you, right, you have created the right definition of plugged in for you, so you're actually never unplugged.
Right.
And those are the strategies that you put in place to not unplug. There are people in this room who might have thought that for the first year that your daughter was born, you were unplugged. We knew otherwise. You were fully plugged in. The definition of plugged, right? And what strategies that you had in place to stay plugged in are the key.
Right. Makes sense.
Make sense?
Yeah.
And this applies to everybody wherever you are, right? This is where David's focus is right now. Make sense? And so one of the realizations was, when we talk about moving the ball, right? We've had a lot of talk in here about, in order to achieve, who do we want to be, where do we want to be, how do we move the ball, all of these different things. The planning that you see from Wade can't happen if you haven't actually been clear about where your focus is, right? And this is what we teach. This is one of the key skills, because this is something you can take in your life, in any job that you're in order to make what you're trying to achieve an inevitable result, right? You set up what success is this year in your marketing business, and you apply this skill to the planning, and your success becomes an inevitable result. How cool is that? To be able to have faith in that. Does this piece of paper look familiar to some folks?
Yes.
And not to others. So there's a lot happening here, right? There's a lot happening here. And everyone in here wants to be their form of what I'm gonna call game day ready. And game day ready in here means, I was calling it jive ready with David, right? Who do you need to be? What do you need to achieve? What skills do you need to have to be ready to sit down with an employee that we're working with? Because that's game day ready, right? For you to truly take advantage of the Access platform that we're building, for us to hand you 10 leads, 10 people to talk to, you gotta be game day ready. And there are some folks who are sort of waiting for something to happen to then decide to get game day ready. And those folks might not ever get game day ready, or they're gonna get game day ready 6 months or a year or 2 years later than if we started now. So what does it mean to get game day ready? One of the key things we learned and realized was these are skills that we need to teach. And so Brett built this awesome platform in order to help identify the strategic areas that someone would want to focus on. Oh, I thought this was the licensing one.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what we were. So,
sorry, I did the wrong one.
no, this is the wrong piece of paper. The piece of paper that we're going to print out and give to everyone is the one that has what licenses are you working on?
Yes.
What skills are you working on? Right? Who's your baseline 30? How are you working your farm system? Right? Because that's what everybody is focused on here in order to get game day ready. What are your licenses that you're working on? And what are you doing this week to move the ball and working on that license? What are the skills that you're choosing to work on? David is working on planning as a skill. Who are you talking to? And then this one is actually going to be what conversation are you focused on? See, we are in the business. If someone said to me, what's your business? It's really interesting because different people have different answers. We're in the financial services business. Brett might say we're in the recruiting business. This week I realized we're in the business of conversations. That's our business. The question is, what conversation are you having? Who are you talking to and what conversation are you having? Am I talking to someone in my baseline 30 and I'm having an impact conversation? There it is. Thank you. Entrepreneurship Training Camp. That's why, because I said game day player and I meant UTC. Apparently. No, I know what.
Here's one. Turn it over.
No.
Turn that other one over. What do you like?
Turn it over.
Should be the other side.
Yeah,
Should
I'm
be the
printing
other
it.
side of that.
It's not.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
not. What was printed from you, Buck? Here. This is, thank you.
I'm printing out.
We got it. We got it. It was ETC. I named the wrong. I gave the wrong name. There we go. This is it. No capital reserves and nothing. Oh, yeah. There we go. Okay. We are in the business of conversations. And that's what this was about. We spent the last month learning a key conversation for recruiting. And what we were doing was teaching, right? How do you learn a conversation? Right? How do we learn a conversation? What's the first thing that we do in here to learn one of our conversations, Tony? We learn what it, right, but how do we do it? How, what it is. And then what do we do? And then, what's the last step? How it works. See, you could sit here and say, oh my God, Robin and Brett are bringing this piece of paper back. And Brett calls it whiplash. He's like, don't give him whiplash. It's not that this piece of paper ever went away. It's that we're in the business of conversations. And so we've been working on a skill with specific content. The skill is what it is, what it means, how it works, applied to this conversation, because then we can apply it to every conversation. What it is, what it means, and how it works. Tony, if someone on your team said, explain to me the what it is part, what would you say? Know the words. Memorize the words. What it is, memorize the words. David, if someone said, what's that? What's that what it means part?
Define the words.
Define the words. Can you explain what each word means on the paper? And then Cindy, what's that how it works part thing? How it works. Yeah, what's that mean? It's, if someone's on your team was like, can you explain the how it works part? What would you say to them?
Well, try to explain to them how the words, what it,
How the words by
how they,
how they work together. Right? What are the subtleties? What are the little conversations? What are the prompts, right? Remember when Brett started doing how does Brett do the intro? See, we can't appreciate the full conversation. It took 4 weeks. Brett started with, now whether you realized it or not, this is an opportunity to realize it now. He started with what it is. He said, I'm going to pass out a piece of paper and I want everybody just to learn the paper. Learn to write it down. And then he talked about each quadrant. He talked about the words in each quadrant for what it means. And then last week, we got into pairs and we actually started working on how it works. And you had enough, because you had the what it is, you had the what it means, that you could actually have a meaningful conversation about, oh, Brett, well, why are you using that question there? See, if we started with the dyads, if we started with you guys talking to each other about this, you most likely, in our experience, would not have been at a place that you could hear the subtleties, because you're still figuring out what the hell is on the piece of paper. We broke that down on purpose. And now each of you are in a place, certainly farther than you were at the beginning when you first put this paper up, to be able to start to really engage in how it works. And every time Wade goes out and shares it with someone, every time you share it with someone, you get better and better at how it works. Now here's the beauty of it. This is how we learn every conversation in this business. Were you able to start engaged in this? Were you able to start understanding the quadrants from the way we did that? Yeah. Do you think that if you could apply that to the theory of decreasing responsibility, you might be able to move the ball in that conversation? See, we practice in here the skill ultimately, and we are a business of conversations. If you could learn this conversation and hear the way you did, you can do what Wade does. And continues to grow on and learn on. The question becomes, what's our arsenal? Who am I talking to and what's a conversation? Am I talking to someone who's getting started? Oh, I'm pulling up my getting started. Am I talking to a baseline 30? Oh, I'm pulling up my impact story. Right? Am I talking to someone who's a small business owner? Oh, I'm pulling up my wellness conversation. These are all conversations. And every conversation, you know you can learn. And the reason you know you can learn it is because y'all learn this one in the same way. So this is not about bringing something new back. This is about saying we took some time to be reminded of, to work on a key skill. And now we get to say, how are we applying these skills on purpose? What conversations are we choosing to learn on purpose in order to achieve our directional goals? Because if you said to yourself, well, Robin, I don't know. I want to build a pre-American business. I want to build an access business. I don't know what the strategies are. We said, that's right. That's why we built this for you. For you to achieve, for you to be game day ready, what do you need? You need your licenses. That is the strategy. Now, we built these lines in here to help build the tactical getting wide for that strategy. You need your skills, right? The lineup, getting wide, the access gap, the 4 principles. We've got a whole fun list here. And it's not like you pick one week and one the next week. It takes time. But by putting it here, by focusing on the tactical, what's the one thing you're going to do this week? We get to move the ball. Baseline 30. Game day ready. This is our, like, the mother of it all,
Wishbone.
right? You do nothing else for a whole year with the baseline 30. Guess where you're going to end up? Freaking look behind you. Imagine all you're going to do. If all you did for an entire year, you're like, we have so much going on between the kids and work. If all you did for an entire year is get your licenses and talk to people you know about what you're doing. That's where you might be. Could you imagine? You can kind of imagine that, right?
6'4" white guy.
Huh? Or white guy. No, but here's the beauty of it, right? You're gonna be able to look right there. Right? On paper on purpose. On paper on purpose. In order to make this work, we have to work together. You know why? Because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And our job in these trainings, you know, when a teacher stands in front of a class, she's got some kids who learn best visually, and some kids who learn best auditorily, and some kids who learn best tactically. And she has to, or he has to prepare a lesson plan that meets all of their needs. But then there are certain kids, right? And then she's got to say, or he's got to say, okay, now I see that there's a particular area that you need some work on, so let's find one-on-one time. And there's an area you need work on, so let's find one-on-one time. We can't, Sue, Brett, me, wait, your coaches, Saturday and Wednesday, we can't hit each of you individually because that's not our job on Saturdays and Wednesdays. Saturdays and Wednesdays are about touching each of you in some way, hopefully, ideally, overall, to move you to do what you need to do between each Saturday and Wednesday. So I am going to ask you one thing this week. I'm going to ask you to get with your coaches by phone, by Skype, by text, by some way, shape, or form to work with them to fill this out. And you might say, oh my God, I could only do this one. Fine. Okay. Maybe we can only work on one quadrant. That's okay. It's okay. Moving the ball at all is moving the ball. And we need to do it as a team. And we got to do it on purpose, on paper. Yeah. So that we make getting game day ready an inevitable result. Make sense? So I want to share one more thing with you. I had a really interesting realization this week, really last night, that I want to share with you. We have been saying in here, and this will be meaningful to most of you, maybe not all of you, that we're not building for the exception. You might say, well, what does that mean? And we won't spend a whole lot of time on this in the future because everybody in here will only know access. But in Sandlot, right, in the other Primerica model that everybody else runs, the challenge of that model is in order to be truly successful in that model, you need to be a certain kind of person when you walk in the door, for the most part. Because if you're not, your upline doesn't actually have enough time to teach you otherwise in that particular model. So you have to be a person who will run through brick walls when you walk in the door. You have to be a person who's ready to talk to everybody. You have to be a person who will do anything at any time that you're told to do, period, end of story. And we called that building for the exception. And it meant that everybody else who walked through that door was eventually left behind. And we said, we don't like that model. And here's why we didn't like that model. Now that looks like the access gap, huh? Well, look at the way the world often works. And this is not actually the access gap. See, this is the group that we're going to call the exceptions. Now, the only reason we call them the exceptions is because they already have, for whatever reason, based on their life experiences, a set of skills and beliefs that allow them to push and run through brick walls. Me, Brett Sears. Brett had a set of experiences in his life that led him, when he walked through the Primerica door, to be an exception. Now, there are a group of people who are like, yeah, I'm just not interested. Like, I don't actually like people. I don't ever want to talk to anybody ever. Like, I'm not really interested in growing. Like, there's always going to be that group of people. But what we realized was there was a big group of people in the middle that were being lost because no one was teaching them how to learn the skills of the exceptions. And we started from the premise that the skills of the exceptions could be taught. They could be learned, they could be mastered, and they could be taught again. One of them we call business development. Well, let's break down and teach the lineup and the baseline 30. Right? One of them we called, you give me a goal, I will hit it. Brett Sears will say that all day long. You give me a goal and I will hit it. Well, part of that is planning and strategy. Right? Knowing what you're hitting, planning and strategy, right? We broke down the skills, and critical was the belief. Here's the thing. The exceptions believe. That's what we talked about last week. The exceptions believe that they're exceptions. The exceptions believe in the opportunity. And they believe that they will achieve it. And it starts there. And so we were like, okay, part of that we can cultivate in this group. But interestingly, part of the reason this group is in the room is because they actually start with some belief in something where they wouldn't be in the damn room, they'd be here. So what I realized is that I was getting frustrated in this room. Not with all of you, but with some of you. I was getting frustrated that you weren't doing for you what you needed to do to achieve what you say you need to achieve. And I had to take a step back and say, okay, if I'm getting frustrated, who's that really about? Me! I'm like, oh, why am I so frustrated? And then I was like, oh, I'm frustrated because I'm treating you all like you're the exceptions. Just because you're still in the room. Now here's what I realized that I think is really key. Cindy, what's that say?
You are all exceptional.
This isn't about, we used the words building for the exception, but what we really meant was we are all exceptional. If you are in this room, you are exceptional. There's something inside you that's choosing to be in this room. So the question is, what are the skills? What's the beliefs that we want to cultivate to move you to be able to achieve in the realm of the exception? Whatever that means to you. Maybe that means 10 offices. Maybe it means $1,000 a month. I don't know what it means to you. And I realized, for me, that part of what I needed to do was to take a step back and get back to coaching. Because coaching is our tool for moving people to here. Now the key is, what does coaching mean in here? And we did this really on purpose. Because being coachable means something else in Sandlot. Which is why we had to redefine it. In Sandlot, being coachable means do what I do and you'll be who I am, even if maybe you don't have the skills yet and you're not actually me and all my experiences. So that's really hard. And here, being coachable requires 3 things. What's the first thing? Direction. Anyone?
Welcome, correction.
Apply. Purpose. Okay, so we define this. Now here was the next level of my frustration. This is also kind of fascinating. David, be coachable. Cool, right? What's that mean? Seek direction. Who's that on? Yeah. Were you doing it? No. So I'm like, what do you mean? I'm here to coach. None of you are seeking direction. Not my problem. Is that what? Not really. See, we put the words up, but what I forgot personally is this is a skill, guys. Seeking direction is a skill.
How to ask for help when you don't know how or have it in the past is a skill.
It's a skill. And could you know something that you don't know? Yeah.
And it's a strength, not a weakness.
Sure. And learning that is a skill. That's part of the skill, right? So now, the way we build access was we're like, okay, fell in a pothole. We're gonna build the ladder to come back up. And now that I built the ladder up, I'm gonna build a bridge. It's not that the pothole goes away, right? I climb out of the pothole, I build a bridge, and I'm like, oh, I have to further break down seeking direction. Because we believe that everyone in this room is exceptional. You all have gifts you walked in the door with. And we get to identify those gifts, shine a magnifying glass on those gifts, and use them to learn, to teach, to master the skills to be an exception in this business, to be exceptional at the business you want to grow, whatever it is. No one on the planet has your heart, Cindy. You walk in the door and everyone's like, oh, I want to hang out with you. How do we take that? So that is what I unpacked this week of what not building for the exception means. It doesn't mean that everybody in here, one, is an exception or isn't an exception. It means that we are all exceptional and that everyone in this room, by choosing to sit here, is taking a stand. That they are exceptional and that they are, with us, going to identify what are the skills, what are the teachings, what are the learnings in order to become exceptional in what you want to achieve. And it has to start with coaching. And coaching starts with seeking direction. And so my commitment to you is to get better at teaching those skills. And if I'm going to teach and coach, I'm going to look for committed students, people who want to be coachable, who show up. Because we're all exceptional. And I want you to hold that for a minute. I want you to remember how exceptional you are. Every one of you. And how blessed we feel to have you in this room. And then, because my friend David will get validation from this conversation all week long. I want you to take that energy and apply it this week. Because otherwise it's just silly. And when you say, I don't know how to apply it, I don't know where, I don't know what, start here. Meet with your coach. And let's start working together on identifying what are the results, what do we need to strategically accomplish in order to make that result an inevitable result, and what are we going to focus on tactically week by week so we know we're moving the ball. That makes sense? Can you commit to that? Can you commit to that? Can you commit to that? Arson, can you commit to that? Melissa, can you commit to that? Wade, can you commit to that? Paul, can you commit to that? Ryan, can you commit to that? Ryan, can you commit to that? See, when we talk about access, we talk about access out there. Which is why I draw it this way. We talk about access being real out there. But when someone asks you, what do you do on Saturday morning? You know what you tell them? See, we're closing the access gap in here.
I have this. Because it's a lot of skills I've always wanted to know, but never do. And you guys are actually taking the time to help us and teach us.
That's what the value is. Oh, I'm really interested in the business, but I don't have all day Saturday. Oh, do I have to come on Saturdays? Do I have to come on Wednesdays? Have we done our job? Can we close the access gap out there if we don't close the access gap in here? No. That's worth some time, people. That's worth some time. So let's do that. Because if we close the access gap in here, the inevitable result is we close the access gap out there. Is that so cool? Yeah, I just wrote that down. You love that, didn't you? Right? If we close, I'm gonna say it one more time. If we close the axis gap in here, the inevitable result is we close the axis gap out there. And now it starts with us. See, we made the axis gap really easily about them. Teaching them, giving them. But when we take the strategy that we close the axis gap in here, the inevitable result is closing the axis gap out there, it becomes about us. And what are we doing? Because that's all we have control over. That's cool. So I encourage you to talk to me, to talk to Brett, to talk to Sue, to talk to Wade this week, to talk to each other. We're a team. Because we have to let them know what it's all about.
Excellent.